welcome to Set Life. I'm Amber Buto, and this is
Kelly Leger.
And today we are in Studio One at For the One Studio, and we have another dear friend of the studios and a dear friend of mine, Michelle Mower. Welcome.
Thank you. Howdy.
So this has been a bit coming. I remember when I opened the studio, and you were one of the first people to come and visit us, and we had great conversations in my office about all the amazing things that you've done in the film industry here in Houston. Kelly says it a lot. We're sitting with Houston royalty, is what we would call it, in the film world and all the things you've done.
I'm like the queen mom. I'm like the old, waiting to die.
Oh no! Oh no! I would agree with the queen part. That's for sure.
Maybe an authority. But
Yeah.
Like I have no power whatsoever, but I'm just like sitting there as a figurehead going.
figurehead.
Yeah, you've done and brought so much greatness here to Houston, and I'm sure the audience is going to get to learn a lot about that in our conversations today. But, you know, the heart of this show is getting to tell inspirational stories of the entertainment industry on Set Life, and your story is nothing short of inspiration. I mean, what you've been able to do and overcome in Houston and the areas has been really great, and I'm just excited for everyone get to hear your story and how you got into it, why you got into it, what you've done in it, all the influence that you've had in it. So let's start with, did you always know you were going to be in this?
I think, you know, I've always had that sort of impulse to tell stories and to, you know, I was a very imaginative child, as you can imagine. And very early on, I discovered sort of like this love of puppetry. Like I would get like, you know, popsicle sticks and I would, you know, color paper dolls and I would glue them to the popsicle sticks and I would like have my puppets talk to each other and I do plays. And eventually I thought, I can maybe charge my parents to come watch my puppet play. And then I would have money for the ice cream truck, which then I could get more popsicle sticks.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I was very entrepreneurial. Yes.
I love that.
and so-
I've not heard that version of
Yeah.
a young kid entrepreneur. I mean,
Yeah.
lemonade, okay,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
not popsicle puppets. Okay, I love it.
I mean, like, what are my parents going to say? No.
Yeah, no.
It's like,
Right.
give me
Of course
50
not.
cents to watch my puppet play. All right. You know,
Wow.
And, you know, and so my sister and I had like this canopy bed, that would be our stage. And yeah, we were silly. But, and I'm sure most of my plays were probably very derivative of fairy tales and so forth. But, you know, we just were having fun. You know, we were kids having fun. And, hey, you know, making money by doing, puppet plays was a lot more fun than making money by doing chores. So,
Yeah.
you know, and
For sure.
so I guess that kind of started my my early interest in you know, sort of the performing arts, I guess, and got a little bit older and, you know, developed my love of writing more. And I think a part of me always kind of knew I would migrate more towards theater. And not at that point, I didn't really, I mean, of course, I love movies. Everybody loves movies. But the idea of, you know, me working in the movie industry, I mean, living in League City, Texas, you know, small town League City, Texas, you know, just was not even
Right.
something that my mind could conceive of at the time. And, but, you know, we had community theater. We had, you know, that was a little bit more attainable. And, of course, we had theater in school where we had, you know, we had a drama club and so forth. So that was a little more attainable. And I was involved in those programs. And but I really, like, gravitated towards writing and learned, you know, of course, back then we didn't have the internet like we have now. So in order to learn how to write plays, I would have to go to the library. And so I got sort of, you know, self-taught, I guess, through going and reading plays and reading books about playwriting. And then when I was in 8th grade, I was selected by my English teacher to participate in a youth writing conference in Houston called BASH. I don't remember what the acronym stood for, but it was really cool because it allowed us to go and meet professional writers. And and so I
cool.
met at that conference, I met Kim Hinkle, who was the writer of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which you know, was big
That
film
was a
back
big
Big
one.
then.
then.
That was a big
Yeah.
one.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's still considered one of the greats,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And I guess that was the first time it occurred to me that movies were written. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write movies.
Wow.
Because I was a huge movie
Oh,
fan. I mean,
wow.
I've been going to movies, my sister would take me to movies. My parents took me to movies. So I was a big movie fan. And that was sort of the moment where I'm like, I can do that. I can write movies. And so from that point on, I would go to the library and check out screenwriting books and
Yeah.
learn how to, write screenplays. Through that process, like for Christmas, other kids are like asking for, Cabbage Patch dolls and stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm asking for a typewriter.
Right. Right.
So I was like, I thought I was the coolest kid because I had one of those typewriters that was like a word processing typewriter where you could
Mm-hmm.
actually like write it, see the words
Yes.
before you push enter
Uh-huh.
and make sure it was all correct, and then
yeah.
push enter, and then it would type it on the page.
Definitely
Yeah,
the cool kid.
I'm
Yeah.
totally aging myself right now. So, but yeah, I mean, that was like, that was what, at that point, I mean,
Mhm.
it's almost like I just knew that was what I was supposed to be. And I think that probably scared my parents a little bit because they're like, our daughter's going to run away to Hollywood and become a drug addict.
Yes.
You know?
How can we
A
hear this story?
writer.
We hear this story a lot, right, from
I'm sure.
parents of
And
artistic kids.
and I was, they were supportive, but also like, we're not so sure about this. Maybe
Apprehensive, yeah.
she'll grow out of it. Well, I
Uh-huh.
never grew out of it. I did study filmmaking in college, and where I discovered my love of directing. So up until that point, I was really focused on the writing,
Mhm.
and then when I got into college, they wouldn't let me just write.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had to do the whole filmmaking process, and I discovered I really liked being behind the camera
Wow.
as well. So I graduated from film school. Initially went to work for Channel 2 as a camera operator, and also a associate producer, which part of my work was to write the news. And after about a year of that, because I was working the overnights, I realized that sort of television news wasn't really what I
Mhm.
truly where my heart lied.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was fun. I got to work with some cool people and so forth, but it just wasn't the kind of storytelling I
Yep.
wanted to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left that job, went freelance for a little while, and then eventually was hired in the job, what I call the best job you could possibly get in the city of Houston if you're an up and coming aspiring filmmaker, which was a job as a program coordinator for Southwest Alternate Media Project, SWAMP.
Ah.
So yeah,
Swamp.
yeah. So
Yeah.
at the time, SWAMP was basically the filmmaking organization of Houston. There was, this is all pre-social media.
Yep.
I mean, we had the internet by then, but we just didn't have a lot of online community
Mhm,
opportunities to build
mhm,
online communities at that point. So, if you were an aspiring filmmaker in Houston, back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, and you wanted to find other aspiring
Yep.
filmmakers to collaborate with, you went to Swamp.
Yeah. A community. It was
Yes.
it was how the
It was the
community
hub
got
of the
together.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was the hub of
Yeah.
the community,
Yep.
of the film community for many years. And so I was hired by Swamp to coordinate all of their professional development workshops, independent film screenings, networking events.
Oh, how cool.
I started the summer
Wow.
the summer lights camera action teen camps. I started those
Oh,
back in 2003. They still do
great.
them to this day. And then I also started the Business of Film Conference, which was a conference that took place at Rice University annually that focused on the business side of making movies. And that ran for 14 years.
Wow.
And then it has just recently been rebranded and revived as the Houston Media Conference.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Wow. No
Yeah, I
idea.
think that is so important. I
Mhm.
don't think there's enough of that.
Right.
I really don't. And I think it hurts the industry as a whole.
Oh, I totally agree. And I mean, the most vital part of any community, especially a professional community like the film industry, is access and resources.
Yes.
And access to knowledge
Mm.
and resources
Yep.
to apply that knowledge.
Yep.
Right. And Swamp was that
Mhm.
for many years. They
Mhm.
provided the professional development workshops, and they also often offered the tools
Yeah.
to be able to go out and make films on the weekends with your friends. And when Swamp started, it was like in the late 70s, so they were shooting 16 millimeter and 8 millimeter, and
Mm-hmm.
on
Wow.
actual
Wow.
film. And then
Yeah.
they had a back room where editing bays where you go and you could cut the
Mm-hmm.
films together.
Wow.
So when Swamp started, that's kind of what they, you know,
Specialized in kind of.
what they offered the
Yeah.
the film community in Houston. Um, when digital technology started to sort of become more prevalent and affordable, then Swamp would then become would offer discounts on equipment rental and so forth to the local rental houses, and
Mm-hmm.
so that filmmakers could still get access to that
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
technology without having Swamp going out and spending the money, because they were a
Yeah.
nonprofit, so they didn't
Yeah.
have a lot of money to go buy
Right.
equipment. And as you know, in the film industry, especially during the early 2000s, I mean, the minute you bought something, it was obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
So
I was just
Mm-hmm.
gonna say. It changes so
right.
fast
And
Mm-hmm.
to.
And
and,
expensive.
and it's very, it can
Yeah.
be, yes, exactly, it's more affordable than ever, but to keep up with the technology can still be very expensive.
Yep.
And so instead of going and putting the money into the technology, they put the money into the people and
Yeah.
into the programs. And so, but they also offered filmmakers a chance to get discounts on rental gear, gear and rentals and so forth. And Swamp's still around; they're still doing their thing, and which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And new other organizations have popped up, along the way, especially social media driven
Sure.
organizations.
Yeah.
So there's more opportunity than ever to find your people,
Mm-hmm.
to find your community,
Yeah.
and collaborate.
Yep.
And especially in a town like Houston, that's just so geographically spread out,
Yeah.
where we're basically, 2 or 3 dozen small towns clustered together,
Right. Yeah.
into a big city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's we kind of get very it's very fractured. It's very,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of get in our little cliques and our little pockets.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's like it's so large
Yes,
that it's not together
that's right.
because it's just so big.
Yeah.
And it's part of our heart here to have this podcast
Yeah.
was to foster community.
Yeah.
And build up a community here where like it's super hard to get your time
Mhm.
and other people that we have on the show that are experts that have a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom, to be able to sit down and have a 30-minute conversation over your story, how you got into it, what you
Yep.
learned from it, all of that, so that it can pour back into the community,
Mhm.
the wisdom
Yeah.
and guidance, and then take that into a resource some kind of way and use it, by all the internship programs. And we offer one here. I know
Mhm.
there's a lot of other places around Houston that offer the internship programs, and organizations like Swamp and all of that we try to help point to.
Yes.
Once we build an influence, is try to point back towards, okay, now here's how to get involved in a good way, and maybe negate some of that learning curve,
Yep.
where it's, you don't go about it all the wrong way. We can say, hey, if you just do a couple of these right things and get plugged into the right place, you'll be set and you're
Mm-hmm.
on your way. You're working in the industry, you're doing it in a good way. And
Well, that's
that
what
way.
happened in my case, because once I got integrated into the industry through Swamp, meeting people, networking, and not just people in Houston, but people in Los Angeles and Austin and New York and all over, and
Yeah.
they knew me because of Swamp. I was able to build off of that network and build
That's
my
good.
own career based on the work that I did for Swamp. People knew the work that I did for the community,
Yeah.
and when I decided in 2010 to produce my first feature film, The Preacher's Daughter, those people came back and supported me. So many people who I had met over the years through Swamp said, we like your work. We
Yeah.
love what you're doing for Houston and the film community, and we want to support you.
Yeah.
And so crew people came on board who, normally would not have worked on a film like mine, with the budget we had, came on board to support me and to
That's
support the
great.
film and to support the community.
Yep.
I had, my sound designer on my film is Kelly Baker, and he'd done, many, many Hollywood films. He did Finding Forrester. He did, Misery. He did, not Misery. What's it called? My brain just died. Sorry, it wasn't Misery.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
the one with Nicole Kidman where she played the woman who got the boyfriend to kill her husband. Gosh, my brain died. Anyway,
but yeah,
so yes, I
that
mean
one.
she's done all these. Well, he did a lot of movies for Gus Van Sant, and he did just huge movies.
Yeah.
But he had done workshops for Swamp on sound for us over the years, and he and I became good friends. And so when I made my first feature film, and I said, I need a sound expert to help me,
Yeah.
and he, agreed to do it for much less than you know Gus was paying him.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
so that's the kind of thing that I learned. The most important thing I learned through this process is what you give
Mm.
in this industry and
Mhm.
in your communities, you
Mhm.
get back.
Yeah.
But you have to do the giving.
Yeah.
A lot of filmmakers come to me and they're like, "Oh, I have the script and I want to, make it, and I
Yes.
need people to work on it for nothing." And I'm like, "Okay, well, then you need to go out there and walk around theirs for
Right.
nothing. And like you
Yes.
need to
Yep.
give, and
Yep.
then, build your community,
Yep.
build your network, and then when it's your turn
Yep.
to get your project, made, or go raise the money and pay
Right.
them.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's really the two ways that you're gonna get this accomplished. And
Yep.
The Preacher's Daughter, we shot that in 2010, and it took a while to get through post production because I had no money, so I would have to raise a little bit of money and keep post going, and then
Yeah.
till I ran out, and then go raise a little bit more, and so it took us about a year to get through post production on that. But we got it to our sales rep, who I met through someone who had been a speaker at the Business of Film conference.
Ah.
So again, Swamp, Business of
Yep.
Film, you know, that connection is what got my film in front of the right person who
Yep.
saw the potential of that film and what it could do. And so we got it in front of Larry Gable with Pierre David and Larry Gable with Imagination Worldwide. They saw the film. They thought it would be a perfect fit for Lifetime. They did a lot of films for Lifetime, and they sold it, and the movie
Pick-
was very successful for Lifetime and launched a whole franchise of preacher movies
Yeah.
and a reality show.
Wow. Wow.
Ah.
So that's, and then in addition to that, I've tried to constantly grow as a filmmaker, not just, kind of say, the industry likes to niche you. They like to say,
Definitely.
okay, this is what you're
Yep.
going back. People ask me all the time. How did you get successful in the industry? What's the key of your success? And my answer is, I made someone money, so they keep giving me money to keep making them money,
Yep.
which is true.
Yep.
The side effect, though, of that is that you kind of get niched by they can make this kind of film,
Right.
and that's the only kind of film that they can make that will make money.
Yeah.
So when you bring them another project like an indie film that maybe isn't for Lifetime, it's still a struggle to get people
Yep.
to give you the funding to
Yep.
get that film made. And so I certainly ran into that, and you know, and it's kind of a shame because filmmakers are just as diverse as
Yeah.
Sure.
any other artist,
For sure.
and should be able to tell whatever stories that they feel passionate about, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because we all have different visions for different stories, and we're not
Mhm.
just like one trick ponies.
Right.
And I mean, maybe some people are, but
Yeah.
I don't think I am.
Right,
And
right.
I've tried really hard to not be,
Yeah.
put in that sort of that that stereotype of this is the
Yeah.
kind of filmmaker that you are, and to challenge myself and to tell different kinds of stories in different
Well, I
ways.
think there's, different genres,
Mhm.
but your voice
Yeah.
in the different genres. We've talked about
Sure.
this before, when you're seeing a certain director's film,
Mhm.
but they're not all the same film.
Yeah.
You just know how he directs and how he sees and his voice that's on that script. And
Right.
that's where I think some of the lower budgeted market gets stuck to a particular type of film instead
Yeah.
of a particular voice within that film.
Correct.
Where you can see that the larger budgets, they'll bet on that director.
Yeah.
Because of what the director can create.
Yes.
And it could be a sci-fi film, and then it could be a Western, and it could be but it's the director's approach, stylistic way to
Mhm.
make that film
Yeah.
that they feel is the right combination with that cast, that story, that everything.
Yeah.
Where I feel like from my experience in the Lifetime, Hallmark, Lord, they just base it off of a formula of a film. Anybody can do that.
Yeah. Well, Lifetime and Hallmark are very formulaic, and,
Yep.
and they want it to be that way.
Yep.
They want you to deliver a product that they know their audiences are
Mhm.
going to,
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
to
it.
sit and watch on
Yep.
a Sunday afternoon, or while they're doing the laundry and cleaning house. They get it. They know
Yeah.
that this is the
Right.
kind of that people just turn on the network and they just watch these movies for the whole day while they're
Yeah.
kind of almost as background noise,
Yes. Right. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
and which it's good to know that about your
Sure.
audience, because then you know what you can and how to write that story for them. It can't be super complex to where you have to watch every single frame to understand what's happening,
Right.
because they're not going to be watching every single
Right.
frame.
Right.
So you have to understand that going in. Hallmark is the same. They have a very tried and true formula
Mhm.
that works for them, and
Yeah.
and the audiences come back over and over and over again for that formula, because it's a feel good formula. It's a
Yeah.
formula that creates like a sense of nostalgia and
Right.
comfort,
Yeah.
about Christmas, or
Yeah,
whatever
for
romance
sure.
or whatever it is. So those formulas work for those networks, and um, you know, so if you are a filmmaker and you want to make a movie for Hallmark, for instance, then you have to
Study
watch
the
Hallmark.
formula.
Yeah, study the
Study
formula. When I made I made The Preacher's Daughter, like I said, in 2010, and it took me like 9 years to write that script off and on. Not that I was
Wow.
writing it constantly for
Sure.
9 years, because nobody was beating down my door for this script,
Yeah.
and I didn't really know how I was going to ever get it made. I knew it was going to get made someday, but I wasn't quite sure how. I didn't have the money, I didn't have the connections, and
Yeah.
so I just started writing the story, and then I would put it away for 2 3 months or longer, and then after a while I get like spark of inspiration, and I go pull it out and dust it
Mhm.
off
Yeah.
and write it again, and I did this off and on for 9 years, and so then when that movie was the highest rated movie on Lifetime for the entire year
Wow.
of 2012, on Lifetime Movie Network for the entire year of 2012, and of course Lifetime came back and said we want another script
Yeah.
and we need it the first draft in 3 weeks. I'm like,
Yeah.
how am I going to do that? And so I had my executive producer send me a script for a similar film that
Uh-huh.
for what he was looking
Yeah.
for, and I said, well, send me a script for a film that's sort of in the same formula
Yeah.
that you want this film to be in. And so because Preacher's Daughter was very much straight up family drama, they wanted a thriller, and I hadn't written that yet. So I said, well, send me a sample
Oh.
script of what you're looking for. And so he did. He sent me a script of one of his previous Lifetime thrillers that was sort of in the same vein, and I did a script breakdown beat by beat, and I just sort of replicated my breakdown of my script based on
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
different story. It was a
Sure.
different
Sure.
characters
Yep.
and all of that. So
Yep.
it wasn't like,
Mhm.
plagiarism or anything like
Right,
that.
right,
But
right.
but I knew where the plot points were.
Mhm.
And I knew
Mhm.
what needed to happen in each of those plot points at each point in time.
Yep.
Also, it was for television, which is a 9-act structure versus
Yep.
feature film, which was 3-act, right? So I hadn't done that before. So I needed to be able to break down the script formulaically to be able to replicate that and get that script
Uh-huh.
written in 3 weeks.
Wow.
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 That was the only way I was able to achieve that. I mean, the first draft was okay. It wasn't great, but I worked with Lifetime over the course of 2 or 3 months, and we got the script where they wanted it, and we shot it. And it was also successful enough where they came back and said we want a
Third
third Preacher movie, and I'm like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, how many Preacher movies are we gonna make? So I call it the Preacher
Fun.
trilogy.
Wow. You made a trilogy. You did.
Well, it's a franchise. Lifetime loves their franchises. So, which is great. It means that I kept getting more work and more work. And I had a lot of friends who were independent filmmakers, some of them much better filmmakers than I am, who were struggling to
Yeah.
get their indie films made. And I was working consistently. So I couldn't really complain,
Sure.
But at the same time, I was in that process kind of pigeonholing myself as
Yeah.
a Lifetime director, whereas they were not. And some of them have gone on to do some pretty amazing things in the episodic TV space now. So they're working directors out, and they're the ones who are getting all the work. And I'm just going, okay.
how was that transition from writing to directing?
So when I write the screenplays, when I'm the screenwriter and the director, the writer director, I do at some point have to take the screenwriter hat off and put the director hat on. And I have to mentally make, okay, we're not writing this anymore. It's locked. The script's done.
Yeah.
Right.
no more changes, because I would literally still be writing The Preacher's Daughter today
Right,
if I
right,
could,
right.
if I didn't do
Right,
that.
right.
Sometimes I actually do think,
Ah.
in fact, it's funny because I reached out to my executive producer the other day. I'm like, hey, I'm not sure if you think that Lifetime might be interested in doing this, but I mean, since Preacher's Daughter was so successful as a made for TV movie for them, what about a series? And he's like, I'll ask them. So,
Yeah.
Wow.
so you never know what can happen, but
Right.
but he's, those kind of things can happen.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Maybe
Right.
Lifetime comes back and says, yeah, we want a Preacher's Daughter series, and I could
Yep.
be right back into writing Preacher's Daughter again.
Mhm.
But you never know how these things are. Of course, right now nothing's happening. Nobody's writing anything, and
Right.
nobody's pitching anything right
Yeah.
now because of the strike. But these things sometimes have a weird way of coming back around.
Sure.
And that is a big trend. Well, before
Yeah.
the writer strike,
Yeah.
it was a big trend to archive some of their greatest things and revamp them and redo them. So there's been a lot of that.
Well, it's smart if you think about it,
coming
because
back.
they own this
Yeah.
IP,
Yeah.
and they can
Mhm.
I mean, for them it's about bottom line, making
Yep.
money, right? And
Sure.
if they have a property that they know can keep making them
Keep
money,
making-
they're going to keep figuring out how to do it. So
That's why
Right.
they love franchise so much.
That's it.
It's lowered risk and
Yep.
more reward if it stays consistent in it, and people like that too, and
Yeah.
want to follow it and
Yeah.
stay in it. So, I think that you have a real chance past the
Yeah.
strike of them looking at the success of that show and then saying, "Hey, now everybody wants to binge watch."
Yeah.
So the format's just different.
yeah,
So let's put this in the same thing they like it, but now just binge worthy.
yeah,
You know.
totally.
Do you like writing or directing more, or both?
I guess I get asked this a lot, and the answer to your question is it's I love them both. I think writing is probably the most fulfilling, but you know, when I'm writing, I'm literally sitting on my couch or sitting on my for writing or sitting up for 2-3 months, sometimes longer, depending on the script. And after sitting for hours a day,
Yeah.
for 2 or 3 months, then I'm like, I gotta get up, I gotta get on set, I gotta
Mhm.
get
Yeah.
on set. So then I get on set. I spend, I'm working on from pre-production through production and post. For a couple of months, we're working on this project, and after 2 months of that, of running, then I'm ready just to sit down on a couch for 2 or 3 months.
So it works
So
well.
it's kind of a nice,
Yeah.
Yeah.
cycle. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
complain.
Wow.
But no, I love both,
Yeah.
both aspects. The writing part, obviously, just being able to work through the characters and the stories, and it's sometimes it's kind of like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, and
Totally.
after you've completed this jigsaw puzzle and you see this beautiful picture, you're like, you feel very accomplished, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Totally.
kind of how I feel with the writing a screenplay. Whereas with the directing, it's a different kind of gratification, and that it's a collaborative process, a collaborative creative process. And for me, I just absolutely love working with actors.
Mhm.
I just love working with actors, and to really get them to that place to get
Mhm.
those performances that are gonna just
Yeah.
make you
Wow
feel
people.
something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
make you
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
something. I
Yeah.
mean, you're writing something on a page and you're putting your feelings into it, and you're hoping that the actors will be able to take
Mhm.
that feeling you put into it and
Deliver it.
translate that
Yep.
visually and through their performances, and put that emotion out into the world.
How challenging is that to have written something and having a very specific heart behind it? I know it can go
Uh-huh.
both ways when you're
Mhm.
working with an actor. They can either bring something to life, you're like, I just never even thought of that. That's so much better,
Mhm.
Versus that's not exactly like, how is that dynamic?
Well, I think, again, I have to take the writer hat off
Yeah.
and put the director hat on, and understanding that it is a collaborative process, and the actors are bringing something
Mhm.
different
Mhm.
to the role and to the story, and to the scenes in particular. And as long as the actors are getting the intention of what's happening in the scene, with their character's intention,
Yeah.
and they achieve the objective that we need to be able to move that plot along,
Hmm.
then I don't. In other words, I don't have it like, okay, I hear when I was writing it, the words came out in my head this way, and the actors
Right.
have to
Right.
have to
Say
say
that.
it
Yeah.
exactly the way that I have it in my head. That's absolutely the wrong
Right.
approach as a director, because then you're not really letting the actors being actors. You're making them puppets,
Right.
basically.
Mhm.
They don't have to put the right emphasis on the right syllable.
Yes, exactly. And oftentimes actors, and their job is all about making choices,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes the choices that they make are way better than what you had in your head when you were sitting, on your couch,
Right.
writing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And they bring so much more life and uh, to that story and to those moments
Mhm.
that are just more profound even than what than what you had in your head. And then occasionally you have actors who just aren't quite getting what the intention
Yeah.
of the scene, of the
Yeah.
moment of the intention is. And so as a director, it's my job to communicate that, communicate what
Yeah.
their motivation and objective and intention in that scene
Mm-hmm.
is,
Yeah.
so that they can because we're filming these things out of order, right? The
Mm-hmm.
actor doesn't know from one scene to the next.
Yep.
They're trying to, okay, what just happened here?
Right.
Where am
Mhm.
I mentally at the scene?
Right.
What's so oftentimes I'll go in with the actor and I'll explain, well, if you remember, right before this happened, so this
Yeah.
is where you're mentally at, and
Mhm.
this is your mindset.
Yeah.
And then what we need from you in this scene is XYZ,
Yeah.
so that we can get to the next scene.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so once they have that sort of bigger picture, then they have the tools they need
Yeah.
to make the choices in their performance to help get us to that next scene. Yeah.
Before we all went on air, recording and stuff, we were all talking about just shooting movies and schedules and budgets and just everything. And we were talking about the difference between a blocked schedule and what we
Oh,
thought,
block shooting.
yeah, block shooting, what we thought about that versus not, and trying to make days and how to make it quicker and
Mhm.
not, and what it forces and stuff. It makes me think when you were talking, there's so much context, subcontext, um,
Subtext.
yes, that is in just being in the room.
Mhm.
And that's what, as you write something and you're reading it and you're building all that in your mind, then to actually live that out,
Mhm.
wow, there's just so many other things that are sensory, everything that's going on in
Mhm.
it, and to
Mm-hmm.
take that into consideration
Yeah.
when you're shooting a film.
Yeah.
So you saying yes in the way I wrote it, I maybe was drawing up a scene in my mind or whatever was happening as I was reading it or writing it, but then in real time, and it's all around you, the whole environment's here, there's an energy, a synergy that's happening for this scene, and setting all of that up, that you have to lend to that.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
That's what you're lending to, and that's why we were saying, or you were saying earlier, that you don't really like to block shoot that way,
No.
because I think that removes some of that.
Yeah.
Now you're shooting just structurally, but you're not leaving
You're getting,
for,
yeah, you're shooting the coverage that you
yeah,
need, in as minimal of time as possible, because now a lot of these productions, you have very, very tight shooting schedules, as they're shooting feature length films in 13, 14 days now, and you just don't have a lot of time
yeah,
to get the coverage you need and to get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of takes. So you have to be very, very clear with your actors what you need from take one, you
yeah,
know, and you maybe will get take two, or if by the time you get to take three, you're like, we got to move on.
Well,
yeah,
So it's very few takes, and so you have to be very clear with your actors from
mm,
the get go of what you need from them, and when you're so one of the things that a lot of that some productions will do is what's called block shooting, where they shoot everything that's in one direction, the camera and the lighting's in one direction, every scene that they have in that location, uh, kind of back to back, and
yeah,
then they'll flip the camera, flip the lighting, and shoot everything in the other direction just to get that coverage. I really, really despise
mm-hmm,
block shooting. I understand the need for it at
yep,
times, especially for scenes that are not, they're just like scenes that get you the information to move the plot along.
yeah,
They're not highly emotional
mm-hmm,
scenes or anything
mm-hmm,
like that. But they're just getting information out scenes, which is fine because you don't need, the actors don't necessarily need to get to a place,
Yeah.
emotionally,
Yeah.
and those are just churning out dialogue, right?
Right.
But the scenes where there's a lot of emotional work with the actors, you can't really block shoot those. You have to give them the respect
Space, yeah.
and the space to be able to stay in that emotional moment throughout all the coverage that you're getting. Because once they're out of that, it's really hard getting them back in. And so if you're block shooting, they have to, it's sort of like a, up and down roller coaster emotionally.
You're reading a few lines of a scene over here, and then you're going to pick up a scene later and read a few lines of that scene.
It doesn't work.
That's crazy. I mean, it's just your mind.
Yeah.
That's tough. Let me ask you about, so I'm clearly asking you all these directing questions. I'm a director. how was it learning blocking and choosing lenses, camera angles? What was that like for you going from writing and?
So for me, that's a part of my collaboration. So filmmaking is a collaborative process, but when you're the director, you're collaborating with multiple people, not just one person. And so that work is done in collaboration with my director of photography. So in prep, during pre-production, I like to go to the locations where we're filming if we have them secured. Then I will go with my director of photography, just he and I, or she and I, depending on who my DP is. And we will kind of look at the scene and we'll sort of talk through it, and we'll come up with a plan, and we'll come up with a shot list together. That gives us a chance to sort of prepare, once, because like I said, we're shooting these things really fast. We're shooting feature films in 14 days, so we don't have a lot of time to go in and, okay, let's try this and let's try that. It's, you go in and you have to have a plan already in place, and you have to execute that plan as quickly as possible. And so doing that prep work is essential. And so we'll come up with, okay, we know this is the basic coverage we're going to need. We're going to need a master or wide shot, master shot. We're going to need, over the shoulders on each of the actors. We're going to need close-ups. If we can get a 2-shot in there, great. But we have to be very intentional with the coverage that we get, and make sure that you're getting enough for the editor to do their job, but at the same time, you're not overshooting. You're just getting the essential of what you need.
Right.
And sometimes we're able to be a little creative where we can kind of get multiple shots in one take, like multiple, like we'll do a dolly in or, things like that, where we can, be a little bit more creative with, the camera work that we're doing. And like I say, can we knock out 2 birds with 1 stone on this shot? How
turn a master
yes,
into
exactly.
a medium,
or can we do this as a oneer? And oh, my DPs hate when I say that.
Oh yeah, you got to hide all that gear.
I know.
And
but oneers serve their purpose. They do take a little bit more planning and time to execute, but they take less time to shoot.
Sure.
Generally speaking,
Yeah.
not as a general rule, but generally speaking, they're supposed to take less because it's just 1 shot. But they take a lot of rehearsal and to make sure that you get it right. But
now, if I go ahead, I know you have more.
No, go ahead.
I'm in my.
I know you're in your yes.
So to rewind a little bit, what you've written quite a lot. So, what would you say your process is? Do you what is your passes, as it were, of the script, or how do your inspiration work for you, etc.?
So when I sort of figure out what the story is, I really try to come up with the.
But that's where it will start. Like the idea is
this
is the story I want to tell.
But then I say, okay, well, this is the story I want to tell, but what's the theme of this story? Like, what's the what's the theme of what I'm trying to of what's of this and building. So I then will go in and I'll do a breakdown of like a beat sheet, like a breakdown. Okay, this happens and this happens and this happens, and usually using that formula basically that is you see in a lot of Lifetime movies and so forth. If it's an independent film, I still use like the 3-act structure sort of guidelines, you know. I won't say that I follow them strictly, but
Right, right, right.
but it is independent film, so you have a little bit
Yes.
more freedom
Leeway,
to
yep.
break away from those formulas, and you should, you know. But you still have to learn the formula. You still have
Yep.
to learn the rules before you can break
Yep.
those, right? But with the Lifetime movies in particular, I will come up with like this last one. We did a film called What Happened to My Sister, which is set in a sorority. We filmed predominantly at Rice University in the Rice U area, and I knew that it was going to be a story about a young woman who joins a sorority at the college that her older sister had attended, and joining the sorority that her older sister had been a member of, to find out who killed her sister. So that was that was the story.
Wow.
Who
Yeah.
killed my sister? What happened to my sister?
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's the theme. The whole theme is her trying to figure out
Redemption of her
redemption,
sister. Yep.
exactly,
Yep.
and resolving what happened to her sister. And so we we built off of that
Yeah.
theme through, I did my research about sororities, interviewed several people who had been members of, so I was not a member of a sorority. So I was like, I
Yeah.
don't even know what happens at sorority. I don't even know what happens at Rush, you know? So I interviewed a handful of people
Yeah.
who had gone through the Rush process and been members of sororities. And you just ask them, like, what happens in sororities? And through those various interviews, I sort of picked things that I thought would be kind of
Yep.
shootable
Yep.
on the budget we have,
Yep.
but also uh, you know
True to the
builds
story.
this world
Yeah.
in as
Yeah.
authentic a way as possible on the budget I had, which was not easy to do. And so, but really honing in on this lead character. And one of the things that Lifetime is very adamant about is they want, because their demographic skews older women,
Yeah.
women in their like 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And so they almost always want a female character, preferably like a parental care, like a mother,
Yeah.
in their movies. And I'm like, well, but it's set in a sorority. I'm like, does a sorority mother count? And they're like, no, we really want someone more emotionally connected to the lead character, like her real mother. And I'm like, but if her real mother dropped her off at college, how is she going to be in the story? So like, and they're like, well, you'll figure it out. So, and I did. So these are kind of challenges that you, as a writer, you have to figure out. Okay, well, the network wants the mother in the story. So I've
Right.
got to figure out how to keep mom, who lives 2 hours away,
Yeah.
in the story.
Right.
And we did that. But at the same time, I'm also trying to challenge myself and try to do something a little more, different, something a little different than I'd done before. And so in this case, I was very adamant about wanting to really have a blind casting, where we could, we could go out and audition women of all ethnicities and
Yeah.
races, and just pick out who the best person was, right?
Yeah.
The best role for the role. And so Lifetime was very supportive of that. So I'm
That's
I'm
good.
always trying to to make films that speak to
Broad audiences.
wider audiences,
Yeah.
and are reflective of our city here in Houston, because Houston
Yeah.
is the most diverse city in North America, and
Yep.
and so I wanted to make sure that diversity was reflected in my film.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
That's good.
So
Wow.
That's good.
Yeah.
I love hearing all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Processes.
I know. It's just great. I mean, you've got 6 feature films that you've done, starting with your first that rolled into your 3 that, turned into 30 more, and your partnership still working on things today. You've just had a really successful career in this. I think it's inspiring to hear how you kept finding a way when there was bounds or stipulations put on, budgets cut or change of scripts or whatever, but you kept finding a way, kept pressing through with perseverance to get to the end result.
That's what filmmaking is.
Yeah.
Filmmaking is problem solving. Storytelling. I mean, especially the type of storytelling that we're doing. I mean, it's all about, okay, we have a problem. How do we creatively get past it? How do we make this work?
Yeah.
And some of the best stories, I mean, look at the story about what happened with Jaws. You have
Yep.
this shark that kept breaking down and was a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
they said, well, we'll just shoot around the shark.
Right.
That was the best thing that could have happened to that
Right.
story. It's like the
Right.
shark was because you didn't see. It was like you were more afraid of what you didn't see than what you actually did see,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so sometimes the magic actually happens by
Yep.
by accident, because you're trying to be creative
True.
and work around problems.
True.
And so
Mhm.
embrace the problems.
Right.
Yeah.
You're
Figure out how to get that story told as creatively and artistically as possible, uh, problems and all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And make it work. And
Yeah.
Preacher's Daughter was a classic case of that. Like, we had so many issues with that film. I couldn't even begin. I mean, I've kind of blocked them from my brain because I had PTSD a little bit over it. But we had lack of money, just all kinds of challenges with that film, largely because of the budget, but also just the chaos of filmmaking itself. The process was just very, very stressful. And one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I've raised children, so so it's but I learned so much through that process. I jokingly tell people that was my master's degree in filmmaking.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of going and
For
getting
sure.
a master's
Yeah.
degree in film, I made a film.
Yes.
Yep.
And probably spent less
Yep.
money than I would have on a master's degree.
Guaranteed.
Yep.
Probably
But
so.
the film was successful and helped me launch
Yeah.
a career. But it was very difficult shoot.
Sure.
And I mean, all kinds of things that I just was not prepared for, even with
Mhm.
all of the what I thought learning I had done through the business of film and all these various
Yep.
workshops that I had done with the Swamp over the years. You never really know until you make a movie
Yep.
how hard it is.
Right.
I agree.
And it's not for the faint of heart,
Right.
by any measure. Like
Yeah.
literally, if you want to be a movie maker, only pursue it if that's literally the only thing you can be. Like, if you can't see yourself doing anything else,
It's so true, though. It is true.
because it is hard. It's
it's very
really,
hard.
really hard. And working with Swamp, especially, I would see filmmakers come and go all the time because they would come in all eager. Oh, I've got this script that I wrote, and I want to make this movie, and it's going to be the greatest thing next to
Yeah.
since Clerks and all blah blah blah. And then
Yeah.
you're just like, great, and then they start making the film, and they start calling you like, my actor won't show up to set today. This won't happen. And I'm like,
Welcome.
well, I mean,
Welcome to film.
exactly. It's it's a very difficult
Mhm.
thing to do, and even if you have all the experience in the world, problems are going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Challenges
That's
are going to
right.
Sure.
happen. As we jokingly say in the industry, Murphy's Law is on the call sheet.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
if it can
Indeed.
go wrong, it will.
will,
And
yeah.
so we you just have to absolutely love the process. You
You
have
do.
to absolutely love the storytelling process and what you do, the
Mhm.
collaborative
The
process,
collaborative,
the
yep.
artistic process. You have
Yep.
to absolutely love it to the point where you cannot imagine yourself doing anything else to be able to to really succeed in that.
Mhm.
And it's all about perseverance. It's about
So true.
perseverance.
Yeah. Well, we could talk for days and days and days. Your history is so long and all the things you've accomplished and done and your wisdom. The beauty of that is you do lots of workshops. You are involved in a lot of nonprofits in the film and things like that. How can our viewers follow you, look into the things you've done, all that? How can they get in touch with you, and what can they get involved in, and how can they follow you?
Well, I'm all over social media, so I guess I'm old, so I'm on Facebook. I do Instagram as well, but I'm more focused on Facebook than I am on Instagram. I am on, that's it really, just do Facebook and Instagram.
Do you have an IMDb?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm on IMDb, so you just
Yep.
type in Michelle Mower and I'm
Yep.
there. But that's not really a way that you can connect with me, but you can
Yeah.
go see what my
Films are.
My
and
films
go
are, my
look up that
credits, yeah.
information, Yeah.
and just reach out to me through those channels. I think is probably is good. And email me or whatever. That's cool too.
Yeah.
But before I did want to tell you a funny story because you asked me about that, my
Yes.
questionnaire, and I was
Yes.
totally prepared to tell it, and then I totally just didn't do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you wanted me to tell you a story about working in the film industry, so I have a great one. This was actually when I was a teenager, before I became a professional filmmaker, before I even went to college. When I was 14 years old, I lived in League City, Texas, a little small League City, Texas, where most people don't even know where that is or what that is. But I live in this little small town, and we had a movie come film in that small town in 1986. It was a movie called Tiger's Tail that starred Anne Margaret and Thomas Howell. And I knew about the film because probably about a month or so before the filming began, the location scout came to my house to scout my house that I lived in. And at this point, I already knew that I wanted to make movies. And so when I found out they were going to be making a movie possibly at my house, I was super excited.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, you can't even imagine. Like,
Yeah.
little 13-year-old
Yeah.
Michelle was just like over the
Yes.
moon. And for a couple of weeks, my parents were talking with the locations people, and things looked like it was going to happen. They were going to film at my house. And then they came in with a bombshell saying, well, we need to to shoot the scene that we need for your film, we need to cut down all the trees in the front of the house. And my parents are like, we bought this property for those trees, so no.
Right.
Right.
So they ended up not filming at my house as a result. And but by this point, I knew where the main primary location was going to be, which was a bike ride from my house. I knew when they were going to start.
Wow.
So every day after school, I would ride my bike over there before anybody knew that they were filming a movie at this house. I knew. And they had the trailers and everything all
Yeah.
set up. But it was kind of a like old historic part of town that not many people went to.
Yeah.
So unless you went over there and looked for it, you wouldn't know it was there.
Yeah.
And so I would go ride my bike up and just kind of watch. And I very quickly became friends with a woman named Annie Carr, who owned the craft services van. And she saw me coming every day, and I was just so eager. And I told her I want to be a filmmaker when I grow up. And so she, thought I was a
yes.
cute little kid, and why not? So she's like, well, why don't I put you to work now? Here, go take this drink over to this actor, or go take. So I became like the craft services PA,
Wow.
essentially.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing, but I was
Yeah.
excited because I'm
Yes.
working on a movie now.
Yeah.
I was just so excited. And then eventually, after a couple of weeks, word spread that Anne Margaret and C. Thomas Howell, who was huge at the time, C. Thomas
Yes.
Howell was a huge actor at the time. This was like 86. We're making a movie in League City. So all of a sudden, all these people started coming in to watch,
Yeah.
and crowding around the set. And so they had to put up the barricades. But by this time, I'd already been
You
working
were
on the
in.
movie for a couple of weeks. So they said, here, go stand by this barricade and hold this walkie-talkie, but don't talk into it. Like, just never talk into it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And don't let anybody cross this barricade. I'm like, okay. So I would just stand at the barricade with the walkie-talkie, and all these people would be like, do you know the actors? And I did. I actually got to meet the actors and hang out with them in the where they were, the
Eating.
commissary
Yeah,
area where
yeah.
they were eating, and got all their autographs. They were just really, really cool people. But the one actor that I was told never to talk to was Anne Margaret, because even though her trailer was 1 block away from the set, she had to be chauffeured in a Rolls Royce back and forth. Well, she's Anne Margaret, right? Like, she's earned that, I guess. But she just didn't like having a bunch of people,
Yeah.
coming up and, getting in her,
Yep.
getting in her space. And so I respected that. So I was told basically if I saw Anne coming to the craft services van to hide. And I'm like, okay, sure. So I'm sitting in the van hanging out with Annie and April, and I look across, and walking across the yard comes this redheaded young Spitfire. And I'm like, and I jump up and I run, and I crawl through the van, and I go out the driver's side and hide behind the van. And so, woman comes up, and she's, very pleasant, like, talking to Annie and everything, Annie and April, and just being super sweet. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, she doesn't sound mean. Everybody said that she was kind of mean, but she actually sounds really nice. And after a few minutes, I hear Annie goes, "Oh, Michelle, come in. It's okay." And so I, like, very slowly and meekly, like, crawl back into the van, and like, it's okay. This is her stand-in.
Oh my gosh.
So it wasn't Anne Margaret. It was Anne Margaret's stand-in.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure Anne Margaret is lovely. I'm sure
Yes,
she's
I'm sure she is too.
But I'm
I'm
sure she's also tired of PAs coming up and asking for her autograph and
Yes.
pictures too. So
Yes.
I get
Wow.
it. But
Yes.
but at the
That's
time,
funny.
I
so
just thought
funny.
Aunt Margaret's so mean because
Yeah.
she won't talk to
Yeah.
anybody.
Oh, man. Her Rolls Royce.
How
And
about
driving
that?
up in her Rolls Royce. But no, she's But it was for me, that experience was really what set my mind that this is what
Ah,
that
I
I
can
not
bet.
see
not
that.
just that what I wanted to do, because I already kind of knew I wanted to work in
Mhm.
film. I just didn't know how to get there.
It brought it real.
But
Like, it
this
gave the
brought film to
realization.
my
Yeah.
neighborhood, and it
Mm.
brought it in front of into my community, and I was able
Yeah.
Yeah.
to be a part of it. And
Yeah.
it made it so much more realistic in my
Mhm.
mind that I could actually do this for a living.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we need more of here in Houston, because we have lost so much production due to
Yes.
lack of incentives, due to state incentives, due to lack of investment by our local business community, due to lack of support by our municipal leaders.
Yeah.
That we have completely lost our film industry, almost completely lost our film
Yep.
industry here in Houston. Aside from a handful of commercials and some industrials, there's just no production happening here. We don't have a soundstage
Yep.
that is large enough to accommodate a large television series.
Yep.
Dallas has several, Austin has several, Houston, the largest city in Texas, has none.
Yep.
And all of those little girls and boys who are growing up, like myself,
Mhm.
who want to make films, are not seeing Houston as a place that they can live and do that,
Yeah.
like I was taught.
Yeah.
So if we don't have any more Tiger's Tales come to
Yep.
Houston and film, how are those kids going to be able to see
Yep.
that it's possible
Mhm.
to do
Mhm.
and to get that inspiration like I had at my age?
Yep.
If that movie hadn't come to town, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know if I would have ever believed that I could do that.
Yeah. Mhm.
You know, because I would not, there's a saying, if they see it, they can be it.
Yeah.
Well, if I hadn't seen it and done it and been a part of that, would I have believed in
Mhm.
myself enough to pursue
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know.
good.
Mm-hmm.
So we need more productions
Yeah.
coming to Houston, real productions that bring
Mhm.
real projects with real budgets to our city, to rebuild our lost infrastructure, to rebuild our lost
Yep.
crew base, and to give those young kids coming up who have dreams of making movies and TV shows an opportunity to see it and to
Mhm.
believe in themselves that they can do it.
Yeah. I agree.
Well said.
Well said. I know that's what I was going to say. I can't say any better than that. Drop the mic, and I think we're done, folks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was really great. And I couldn't agree more with you. It's part of our heart of starting and building the studio here to give some sort of facility to support that, to support part of the vision of that, to try to move the needle just a little bit. And like you said, in the 80s, we had a thriving industry here.
Yeah.
And it's essentially dried up over the last, 20, 40 years. It's just kind of gone away. So, we're the third largest city. We have immense talent here. We have so much to offer, and we need to pull that back, but so much of
Absolutely.
it's,
Well, it's really frustrating because our state legislature just passed they appropriated $200 million towards our state incentive program, which is
Yep.
double the amount that they've
ever
ever
given.
given before. And all of that money is going to Austin and Dallas. Very little of that money is coming to Houston.
Yep.
And it doesn't make any sense. They're about to build a $100 million soundstage. They're
Yep.
about to break ground on a $100 million soundstage in San Marcos.
Right.
If San Marcos can figure out how to raise the capital to develop and build a soundstage, a $100 million soundstage, what is going on with Houston?
Yeah.
We're far wealthier city,
Yeah.
a far larger business and community here, and more talent and diversity here, which is what the industry wants,
Yeah.
than San Marcos. Nothing against San Marcos. I love you, San Marcos. Wake the Dead's my favorite coffee shop ever. But
Yes.
you see
Real.
my point.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see
Yeah.
my
Sure.
point. Like,
Yeah.
we're huge city with so much talent and diversity and so much money. Why can't we figure this out? If San Marcos can figure it out, why can't we?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And I think it's landing those contracts, landing those bids, because as a large soundstage here couldn't survive without it.
Yeah, totally.
So I think it's those partnerships that need to come to Houston, not just the facilities. The facilities, in my opinion, are the easy part. Like to build a facility.
I'm glad somebody thinks so, because I think that's the hardest part for me. I can make the movies. I don't know about building movie
Yeah.
studios. That's not my
You
my area of
know,
expertise.
yeah, that's a no-brainer for me. You have to have the work
Yeah.
to make it sustained.
Yeah. Totally.
And in Houston, the work isn't here for one of those mega sound stages.
Yeah.
So it's fostering and building the relationships and bringing, now that we have the incentives, brings more production here
Yeah.
to Texas in
Yeah.
general, to allow us to say, okay, hey, let's sign on a couple of shows that are going to be for the next. All right, then we'll pull the trigger to build the infrastructure for it.
Yeah.
I think that's our next steps here in Houston. I think our next steps are collaboratively pulling together as a community. I can say that they do that better in Dallas and Austin than we do here in Houston.
They do.
And that's again, we started out in the conversation of saying it's so big that we're all these little bitty pockets, where those little bitty pockets need to come together as in one voice. And that's what I loved about Swamp and then Houston Media Conference. For the first time, getting everybody together again. That community has to foster again. Like we have to bring everybody together as in one, and then piece all the pieces together and say, all right, hey, here's what I can do, here's what I can offer, here's what I can offer, and then all togetherly say,
and we all
this is
need
what we're going to do.
Absolutely. We all need to understand that everybody who's bringing their area of expertise is just as valid as the next person. Because we also have an issue in here where, like, the commercial people are like, unless you're working in commercials and we're getting paid this up budget, then, we're not interested,
Yeah.
Well, but there are other kinds of productions that could be held. And if we're us, as I like to tell people, we don't work in a, in a bubble,
Silo,
in a silo.
Yep.
We are an ecosystem.
Yep, that's right.
And all the productions from, student films on up to big major, TV shows and movies is a part of that ecosystem. And we need every single part of that ecosystem working together and symbiotically, so that we can continue nurturing those up and coming talent who will grow as artists and storytellers, to continue producing more content, that as they, their careers grow, and continue bringing more jobs to Houston that will then nurture that next generation, right?
Yeah.
So it's an ecosystem, and I've never been able to get the larger Houston community to recognize that, because they're all working in their very specific space, and they only want to work in that space. And if you're not working, if your space doesn't mesh with my space, then I am not interested in your space.
Yeah.
And it's very fractured, and that has to stop.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
Like, we need more horror films. We need more faith-based films. We need more all of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need more low budgets. We need more big budgets. We need more of everything to rebuild our infrastructure.
I agree.
And to create an ecosystem that's going to work.
Well, I think we've hit a passionate topic of all of ours here. So, Michelle, thanks for coming and sharing and giving your wisdom and everything. And Kelly, it's, again, always fun to sit with you too.
Always fun.
And hear all the director takes. And
I just nerd out. This is a show where I just come and nerd out with
I know. I like
fellow
it.
people.
I like it. I like it. So, but thanks for your time.
Of course.
Thanks for being
here. Well, thanks
here.
for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't wait to see I hope you can edit a few little things out of all that rambling that I did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
No, it's great. It's great. So
get a few little sound bites out of that whole mess.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to your editor. That's all I'm saying.
Right. They do a great job for us, so I know that they'll work magic with, like they always do. Our team is a great team here, and
I can't wait to see it.
We appreciate everybody that works on this show and does their part, and that's we're a big family that loves to collaborate together, and we fully know that it takes everybody behind the scenes to make this look like what it looks like that at the end of the day. So we're appreciative for all that. But until next time, we will see you on Set Life.